Hi everyone, this is Elias Martin of CollectingJapanesePrints.com. Welcome to Woodblock Wednesday, where every Wednesday we get together and discuss Japanese prints, paintings, history, and culture. This is sort of a late night edition of Woodblock Wednesday. I had a lot of appointments. We're in the middle of the holiday season, as you guys know. So there was a lot of shipping, a lot of appointments today, but I wanted to get this video out because I have some very wonderful things to share with all of you. And it's not every day this type of material comes in. And so, of course, all of you are the first ones I think about. Got to share this with my Woodblock Wednesday crew. So thanks for joining me. Of course, for those of you who are joining me on YouTube, welcome as well. I do these videos live on Facebook every Wednesday. So today I have a group of 3 works to show you. An oil painting on canvas and 2 woodblock prints of the same design but different states. They're all by the Shinhanga artists Ishikawa and Toraji. Ishikawa Toraji was known both as a painter and as a bijinga woodblock print artist, or an artist of woodblock prints that specialized in images of beautiful women. And so some of his designs are iconic of 20th century printmaking, but he was an amazing painter. He was a landscape painter as well as a portrait painter. And I have a very rare painting of a Moga, a modern Japanese woman, and I'll explain what a Moga is in a bit. I've discussed the idea in the past, but we'll do a little review. But without further ado, let's go to the table and have a look what I have. So I'm going to walk backward so I could show you all the pieces on the table, and then and then we could talk about them. So the first work is an oil painting, and I should give you a little bit of information on Toraji. Toraji was born in 1875 and passed away in 1964. And as I mentioned, he was an artist that specialized in paintings as well as woodblock prints. He made his living doing both things. Of course, as an artist, and when you produce woodblock prints, you're only paid for each design once. And once the print is done, the publisher is the one that is making the money. So, Toraji's output of woodblock prints was very limited. He only did a few. I would say off the top of my head, at least a dozen or so. And that's really it. He was really more of a painter. And so this particular painting is a beautiful nude done circa 1930. And it's an oil on canvas. And what you see here is a Moga, or a modern Japanese woman who during the late 20s, early 30s, was famous for wearing very stylish, modern, Western clothing. Basically, these were the flappers of Japan, and they cut their hair very short, like a flapper-esque hairstyle. And you see here, she has a very short haircut, like a bob haircut, which, to be honest, at this time was really taboo. Women rarely cut their hair. They wore their hair long, or they wore their hair up, but they never cut it. And in this case, modern young ladies who moved to Tokyo to experience city life and go to jazz clubs and drink martinis and do everything that was modern and in many cases Western, would cut their hair in this particular style. And you could see, she's very much lost in thoughts and not necessarily aware or even or not even caring that she's reclining nude. It's a beautiful painting, and Toraji was a master at producing these fantastic nudes. And in this case, I think this design is so beautiful, partly because of the beautiful woman, of course. The proportions of the painting are just perfect. She's reclining on sort of a daybed with a this looks like fur to me, and so you could see the fur quality kind of sort of brushing up against her body. And you could see the fur sort of brushing up against her feet. It looks very, very comfortable, this bed there. And so she's sort of reclining. Her arm is behind her head in a very Matisse-like sort of pose. And in fact, Toraji was influenced by Matisse quite a bit, and many of his new designs in woodblock prints echo sort of Matisse's not necessarily style, but certain things about Matisse's work. And we could talk about that when I showcase the woodblock prints. But in this case, it's this beautiful, vibrant red that Matisse was so fond of using in a lot of his designs. And here in the background, there's ornamentation. Matisse loved Oriental fabrics, particularly from the Middle East. He also liked exotic furs and in certain of his paintings where he would add all of these elements with nudes as well. And so this nude, which is very Japanese, is also very Western in many ways, looking towards some of the artists working in this sort of subject. But Toraji really makes it his own. And of course, the woman being Japanese with this quintessential Moga haircut is, I mean, it just makes the painting. The only thing you really would need is a little side table with a little martini glass. Oh my God, that would that would really make this painting of the period. But this is fantastic, and so I just want to sort of zoom in so you could see the painting. The colors are really vivid. They're beautifully applied and mixed. You could see pinks here, yellows, a slight blue, creating shadow and depth. And the face is done so well. I mean, it's a stunning gem of a painting. You know, it's a great size. It's actually about the size of an Oban size print. It's a little smaller than his actual woodblock prints of nudes. So, you know, the image is about the size of the image in the print, though the margins are much larger, so it's a bigger work. So the size, the proportion of this is perfect. It's also perfect for a Japanese home. This particular painting originated from a Japanese collection where I acquired it in Japan. And so, you know, it really speaks to also Toraji's clientele. He made some very large paintings for some salon-like rooms, hotels, and so throughout Japan, you see these paintings, these larger scale paintings, but he also made several about Oban size, and these are wonderful alternatives to his prints. In fact, in many cases, like I said, the paintings far surpass the designs that he produced in his woodblock prints. So, you know, I'm so delighted to be able to show you this rare painting that has not seen the light of day publicly in probably a generation or two. And so I'm going to move on. We'll come back to the painting in a moment, but I want to move on to two woodblock prints of the same design. This is a work done in 1934, I believe. It's called The Dance, or The Dancer. You know, I've heard it been called a couple times. I just dropped something. Let me pick that up. So anyway, I don't want to step over my pencil. So this is a work by Toraji done in 1934 called The Dance or The Dancer. And it is a stunning woodblock print. Basically, it's done on this very large sheet. And you see this wonderful nude that's standing in the center. And notice her hair. This is the same haircut that I was just discussing in the painting. It's that Moga style haircut of the late 20s, early 30s. And so this woman who is in a cabaret dancing for a clientele there who are, I'm sure, enjoying Western-style drinks, is very much a moga, very much caught up in the activities of modern life in the late 20s, early 1930s. And so this print is probably Toraji's most desirable design. It's certainly the most sought after, and because of that, it's very rare. And because when I do these videos, I do them to introduce these works to many of you who are not familiar with these designs. But I also want to add some connoisseurship to my viewership that are actually collectors. And in this case, I want to clarify some things. A lot of people don't understand the different states for these Toraji prints. So, for example, this is the original tissue paper that is on the print, and it should have the title there, as you see, printed onto the tissue paper. The tissue paper is attached to the print on the reverse, so it's like a little sort of folder cover. And I want to also point out that on the very first states, the only cartouche you see on the left-hand side, there should only be one, and that is it. There are at least 3 states. There might be even more. There might be some later states that I'm not aware of, or I've seen them here and there, but I've not studied them closely. So there's this state, and I have the second state, and we have 2 cartouches here. And for the purpose of our conversation, these are smaller, almost equal size cartouches on the left-hand side. The third state has a series of cartouches with a lot more information. The publisher, so I believe the carver, and then here the carver printer are listed, and then the publisher. So there's a lot more information along the left-hand side, and the cartouches are printed with a darker ink, and it's kind of messy, and it's indicative of the fact that they're later printings. The printing effects become less and less in terms of quality. So, for example, this first state, the differences in this print are not, they don't scream, they're more subtle, but they're there. So the signature and the seal of Toraji are above the red portion. Here we have the red portion where you see the signature seal below. Also, the most obvious is the spotlight around the dancer. It's softer, it spreads across in sort of a more even way. And here, there's more of a sort of circular sort of shape to the spotlight. So that's and also the light is a little bit stronger, and it casts a different sort of glow on the dancer's skin. And we'll compare that for a second. The other thing I want to point out is the color of the shadow on the first state here and even at the bottom is more intense. And also this blue, this beautiful dark blue, it's almost like a purple color that creates a shadow from the spotlight. That is a little bit more intense than the later printing. Now, it's hard to show you the differences in terms of color using my phone, so you're just gonna have to trust me. But I do want to show you that. You might be able to capture how different the colors are. They're subtle, but when you have both of them, you can see them. The other thing is these lines in the background are interesting. They're a little softer. And I think these are the lines from the curtain that's behind the dancer. And so they're a little softer here. The lines are a little bit more harsh. And I like the fact that they're softer because they suggest a plush or softer material, like sort of like a satin or some other material that's at the backdrop for this dancer. So that's kind of neat. The other thing I'll point out is that the title is printed on the left-hand side of this print. Notice that there is no title on the sheets. So we have the sheet, the cover sheet, which is on this print, which is great. You usually don't see them on there. Has, excuse me, has no title, and so we have it on the print itself. Here, first state, the title's on the sheet, no title in the margin. And the last thing I want to point out, and then I could show you the print a little bit more carefully, is if I could pull this out. So I have a very rare hanshita, or this is the key block impression, which is the basically the very first block that the printer prints, and it allows the printer, to create the woodblock harbors to create the other blocks that utilize the different shades or different colors. And so this is basically, when you think of the first printing stage, it should always look like a page out of a coloring book, because it's basically the outline, and it always shows the lay of the land where all of the other subsequent blocks of color need to be carved and printed so that they stay within the lines. So it's amazing to see the design stripped down, no pun intended, but it does apply here, to the very first raw design with just the fine lines. And then what we have here is obviously the finished print with all the subsequent color blocks printed over and within the lines. So it's a really neat thing to see. So I'm going to become a little silent so that I could just focus on showing you these wonderful prints. I think I spoke enough. And here's the key block. And you could see the woman's face is a little different without the makeup, without the lines and the color of the color blocks. You could look at, if you compare the woman's face here and here without the pigment, it looks a little bit different. It's almost analogous to seeing someone with and without makeup. It's kind of interesting. And then, of course, the printing of the second state. I'd say that woman's face looks slightly different from the first states. I mean, it's interesting to see because it's just subtle, but the pigment is a little bit different. You see a less amount of rouge or red on the cheek or even around the eye. In here, you see a little bit more rouge on the cheek and even around the eye. So it's interesting to be able to compare. And again, this has the original sheet cover that protected the print. It's kind of a presentation. It's not a folder, but it helps with the presentation, and it protects the surface of the print, which is neat. That's usually removed. You don't see it with the cover sheet, but it was originally issued with the cover sheet. So I'll move the key block there, and I'll show you how, with the writing, that's what the print should look like, and how it was originally issued. So once again, gotta carefully open it. Here it is. It's a beautiful print, beautiful print. And, there's stories about this design. And I've heard from different people that this design was very controversial and that the blocks were confiscated by the authorities. There was some censorship in the 30s as Japan became a bit more militant and less and was giving a lot less artistic freedom to artists. So I heard that happened, but in this case, for this design, I'm not sure if that happened. And the reason for that is that there's so many states. There's this state, there's the second state that I'm showing you today, and there's at least another third state, but I think there's 4 states altogether. So if the authorities confiscated the blocks, it wouldn't make sense that there would be 4 states. What that tells me is that this design sold very, very well. There are other designs within his body of work that there's one design that I think was confiscated, and because that design is actually pretty rare. But I don't have it here today, so we won't discuss it. But the point is, there was some censorship at this time, and so a lot of these prints were destroyed or confiscated and then destroyed, and the blocks were confiscated, and the publishers could not print further editions. So, I wanted to point that out, and what I'll do is I'll move this print over carefully to make a little bit room. Can I do this with one hand? I might. Yes. Okay, so the other thing I want to point out is this is the Ishikawa Toraji catalog. It's a beautifully produced catalog. It was done, I don't know, about 10, 12 years ago by a prefecture museum that features Toraji's work in number. They have a large quantity of paintings and prints. And so the book does a great job of outlining Toraji's body of work as a painter as well as a woodblock artist. And you'll see that these paintings are really striking. He did a lot of florals, a lot of landscapes, and of course some nudes. And then of course his prints are in here. But this particular painting, I think, is one of those works that you really showcase his talent in this subject as a draftsman, as an oil painter, and as someone living in a very important time in Japanese history in documenting the fashion of the time and the sort of the breaking free, in many cases, of women who were moving away from their families, moving into Tokyo at a very exciting time as the city grew and became much more bustling. They were able to find jobs, and in so doing became much more independent. And this was a very important time in Japanese modern history, particularly for women. And in this case, Toraji showcases that, as I said earlier, that famous Moga haircut, where these women, for the very first time in many cases, cut their hair short, which was a big taboo at the time, and were liberated. I say that in air quotes, because it was this sort of liberal environment was short-lived, because by the mid-30s there was a lot more censorship and the government was clamping down on individual freedoms. And so it was very short-lived but exciting time in Japan. It was the sort of the roaring 20s, so it was the end of the 20s into the 30s that produced this time. And so this painting is very much showcasing that really important, beautiful, exuberant time in Japanese history. So I'm going to zoom in again so you could see how beautiful this painting is. You could see the side of the painting. I don't have it framed right now, so it is just oil on canvas loose without a frame. You could see that it was stretched in a very normal, conventional Western manner. The Japanese were very much skilled at producing oil paintings at this point in time. They've been producing oil paintings since the Meiji period, and so at this by 1930 they were doing this. This was not something new, and so it's stretched, and the whole thing is done exactly what you would expect to see with a painting that was produced in Europe or in the U.S. in the 30s. So one last time, I'll show the print. I don't want to show the other print because it's on below this design, but in this case, I'll just show you again the first state of this impression. Maybe I can maneuver. It's actually pretty difficult to do this with one hand as I'm recording with the other. I'm just doing a quick review. If you're just joining us, so I see Michael. Hello, Michael. If you're just joining us, I discussed Mogas and Toraji and the first state of this impression. Here is a hanshita or key block, the very first block that's been printed of the design. And then here's a very early second state impression. And I talked about the differences among the first and second state. So it's really cool to be able to see an early second states alongside the original hanshita and the first state impression of this very important print, Dancer or The Dance, La Danse, from 1934. Oh, I should say one last thing about the printing. This is all silver mica. So there's a silver block that was carved to print this beautiful clear shawl that she has. It mimics almost like a spider web. It's kind of cool. And it shimmers with the light. It is metallic silver of the, printed on directly onto the print. Hi, Liz. Can you show the back of the key block? Yeah, sure. So here's the key block. And it's pretty blank. It's just a sheet of paper. There's no colors, obviously, so there is very little bleed through. You could kind of make out the black impression of the design of the woman's face, but it's pretty dull. And I'll just, for comparison's sake, this is what you get when you have the entire print printed. You do see the colors come right through. So it's really interesting to see that. Also, the other thing I'll point out is that the paper used on this key block isn't the final great paper that's used on the print. This is a thinner paper. It's not high quality. And you'll see there's no deckling, so you don't see the edge of the paper where the feathering is. This is the type of paper that's handmade and done to present a beautiful printed work. This is a paper that's used for utilitarian purposes, so that you can print onto this block, onto this print, and then use this in the carving of the other blocks. You basically cannibalize this key block. The printer makes quite a few of them, and then the carver uses these as a guide to carve the other blocks that help print the design with the colors. So that's why these exist. And he makes a lot of them, and so he makes more than he'll need, obviously, and that's why they survive. So one last time. And here's, of course, the book, the Toraji Ishikawa. I highly recommend this book. I always like to show the companion book to whatever we're discussing. And the final, again, one final look at this stunning painting. It's a fantastic piece. Well, I want to thank all of you for joining me. This was a great little group. I was really excited to show it with all of you. Toraji paintings of that quality, of that subject, are extraordinarily rare. And they're very important pieces, historically as well as artistically. So it's a pleasure and a privilege to have it today to show it to all of you. So thank you for joining me. And of course, if you're interested in learning more, or you're interested in Japanese woodblock prints or reference books, my website has quite a bit. So please go to collectingjapaneseprints.com to have a look at what I have. Of course, if you have any questions, feel free to shoot me an email. And of course, there's a few wonderful things in store for all of you out there. I'm currently working on a Tanaka Roihei exhibition. I'm hoping to put up the exhibition live by Friday of this week. That's about a couple of days from now, and the exhibition will have about 55 to 60 works. So it's one of the biggest retrospectives on the artist online, and so it's a wonderful opportunity to sort of see his body of work. There'll be early pieces as well as later printed works, and so you'll be able to see his entire body of work. So if you don't know anything about Tanaka Roihei, I encourage you to go to my website. You'll be able to learn a little bit more about him, see some prints that I've sold in the past, of course. But very importantly, if you're not on my email list, join the email list, and you'll get the messages when I do these website updates, and you'll be one of the first to know. So again, thank you very much for joining me today, and I look forward to seeing you all next week on Woodblock Wednesday. Until then, thank you.